The morning began like any other, but something in the air felt different. She woke up to the sound of her alarm ringing, the kind that buzzes endlessly until you force yourself out of bed. The sky outside her window was still pale, with the first light of day sneaking through the curtains. She stretched, rubbed her eyes, and sat quietly for a moment. Today was special. It was the day of her big interview, the one she had been waiting for. The company she was applying to was known for being competitive, but she had dreamed of working there for years. She wanted everything to be perfect, yet life rarely goes as planned. She had ironed her clothes the night before and packed her documents neatly in a folder, but when she looked at the clock, her calmness vanished. She was already running late. Her heart started racing as she rushed through her small apartment, grabbing a piece of bread in one hand and her bag in the other. The city was awake when she stepped outside. The streets were busy with honking cars, people talking on their phones, and buses hissing at every stop. She walked fast, trying to make up for lost time. The air smelled of coffee and car fumes, and every sound around her reminded her that the world was moving fast, just like her thoughts. She had spent weeks preparing for this interview. She had gone through her answers, rehearsed in front of the mirror, and even practiced her smile. She wanted this job not just for the money, but for the sense of purpose it offered. She had been working small temporary jobs that barely covered her rent, and this opportunity felt like a chance to finally turn things around. Her shoes tapped quickly on the pavement as she crossed street after street. She glanced at her watch again. If the bus came on time, she could still make it. But when she reached the stop, the bus had just left. She exhaled in frustration, trying not to panic. "All right," she whispered to herself. "It's okay, just take a taxi." She waved at the first one she saw and got in. The driver nodded when she gave him the address, and the car began moving slowly through traffic. Every red light felt like an eternity. She tried to calm herself by looking through her notes once more. Her hands were slightly shaking. She imagined herself in the interview room answering confidently, smiling politely. She wanted to leave a good impression, someone who was not just skilled but sincere. As the taxi stopped near the main street, she paid quickly and got out. She was only a few blocks away from the building now. The company's tall glass tower was visible from a distance, gleaming under the morning sun. She felt a mix of excitement and nerves. But then, something caught her attention. At the crosswalk ahead, traffic lights were flashing red and green in quick intervals, and people were rushing in every direction. Among the crowd stood an old man with a white cane in his hand. He was standing still, his head turning slightly as if listening for something. The cars moved fast and people brushed past him without noticing. She stopped walking. Her first thought was that someone else would help him. After all, the place was crowded and she couldn't afford to be late. Her interview was in less than 10 minutes. She took a step forward, hesitated, then looked at the man again. His hand trembled slightly as he tried to sense when to move. Something inside her wouldn't let her walk away. She sighed softly, glanced once more at the building across the road, then walked toward him. "Excuse me," she said gently. "Would you like me to help you cross?" The man turned his head toward her voice. His face was calm, lined with years of life, and his smile was kind. "Ah, thank you, dear," he said quietly. "That would be wonderful." She took his arm carefully, adjusting her pace to match his. The crowd around them moved fast, but they took slow, steady steps. The man's cane tapped rhythmically against the ground as they walked. The smell of freshly baked bread from a nearby bakery mixed with the sounds of honking cars. For a brief moment, everything slowed down. When they reached the other side, the man smiled warmly. "You've been very kind," he said. "Not many people stop these days." She smiled back, slightly out of breath. "It's no trouble," she replied. The man nodded and said something that stayed with her long after they parted. Kindness always finds its way back. Remember that. She didn't think much of it at the time. She thanked him, wished him a good day, and then turned to continue toward her destination. But as she hurried away, she realized she had lost precious minutes. She began walking faster, weaving through the crowd, her heart thumping louder with each step. By the time she reached the company's entrance, she was 5 minutes late. Her palms were sweaty, and she took a deep breath before entering. The lobby was sleek and modern, with glass walls and soft music playing in the background. The receptionist looked up and smiled politely. "Good morning. Do you have an appointment?" "Yes," she said, trying to sound calm. "For the marketing position." The receptionist checked the list, then nodded. "They're waiting for you. Please take the elevator to the 12th floor." She thanked her quickly and stepped inside the elevator. As the doors closed, she saw her reflection in the mirror panel. Hair slightly messy, a faint line of worry on her forehead. She fixed her jacket and whispered, "You can do this." The elevator stopped with a soft ding, and she stepped into a long hallway lined with glass offices. A woman led her to a large meeting room where 3 people sat at a table. She greeted them politely and apologized for being late. The oldest among them, a man with silver hair and dark glasses, turned his head slightly when she spoke. He smiled in a way that made her pause. Something about his voice sounded familiar when he said, "No worries, please have a seat." She sat down, still catching her breath, unaware that she had just met the same man she helped minutes ago. The interview began as usual. They asked about her experience, her skills, and how she handled challenges. She answered as honestly as she could, though she could still feel her heartbeat in her throat. Every time the older man spoke, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had heard him before. His voice was gentle but carried authority, the kind that made people listen. At one point he asked, "Tell me, what do you think makes someone truly successful?" She thought for a moment before answering. "I think success isn't only about money or titles. It's about doing something meaningful and treating people with respect along the way." The man nodded slowly, a small smile forming on his face. "That's a good answer," he said. When the interview ended, she thanked them and left the room, unsure of how she had done. She walked out of the building feeling a mix of relief and doubt. Maybe being late had ruined her chance. Maybe they thought she was careless. But deep inside, she also felt a quiet sense of peace. She had done what felt right earlier, and somehow that mattered more than being perfectly on time. The city was still busy outside, the noise louder than before. She found a small bench nearby and sat down, closing her eyes for a moment. The words of the old man echoed in her mind. Kindness always finds its way back. She smiled faintly, not realizing how true that would soon become. That evening, as she returned home, she felt tired but calm. She replayed the day in her mind, the rush, the missed bus, the blind man, the interview. She wondered if any of it would make sense someday. Sometimes, life connects small moments in ways we don't see at first. She didn't know that her choice to help that morning had already changed everything. The next morning began quietly. The sound of rain tapping against the window woke her up. The sky outside was gray and heavy, and the air smelled fresh. She lay there for a moment, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the interview. Every question, every answer replayed in her mind. She tried to guess what the panel thought of her. The older man's calm voice still echoed in her head, the way he had smiled when she spoke about success and kindness. There had been something gentle yet powerful in his presence. She still couldn't shake the feeling that she had met him before, though she couldn't quite place where. As she got ready for the day, she noticed the nervous flutter in her stomach again. Waiting was always the hardest part. She made some tea, sat by the window, and checked her phone again and again, hoping for an email or a call. Nothing yet. The world outside moved slowly. People hurried through the rain with umbrellas. Cars splashed through puddles, and somewhere in the distance a vendor was calling out to sell warm breakfast snacks. She watched it all quietly, lost in her thoughts. By afternoon, she decided to go for a short walk. The air was cool and the rain had turned into a light drizzle. She didn't go far, just around the block, trying to distract herself. She stopped by a small bakery and bought a simple bun, her mind still wandering back to the interview room. She had done her best, she reminded herself. Maybe that was enough. When she returned home, her phone buzzed. Her heart jumped. It was an email from the same company. Her hand shook slightly as she opened it. It was short but clear. "Dear applicant, we would like to invite you for a second discussion tomorrow at 10 a.m. Please confirm your availability." For a few seconds, she just stared at the screen. Her mind went blank, then her lips curved into a slow, disbelieving smile. A second round meant they were still interested. That was a good sign. She quickly replied with a confirmation, then placed the phone down and took a deep breath. That night she prepared again, pressed her clothes, checked her notes, and set the alarm twice to make sure she wouldn't be late this time. Still, sleep came slowly. Her mind wandered back to the old man she had helped, the sound of his voice, his kind words. She didn't know why that moment felt so connected to everything that was happening. When morning came, she woke up before the alarm. The sky was clear this time, sunlight streaming through the curtains. She felt different, calmer, more grounded. She made herself breakfast, left early, and took the bus instead of rushing into a taxi. This time she reached the building 15 minutes before the appointment. The lobby looked the same as before, busy yet quiet. People walking in neat suits, some talking on phones, others waiting in chairs. She gave her name to the receptionist, who smiled and told her to wait. After a few minutes, the same assistant from before appeared and guided her to a smaller meeting room. There were only 2 people inside this time. One was the woman from yesterday, and the other was the older man with the dark glasses. As soon as she entered, he smiled. "Good morning," he said warmly. She greeted them politely and took a seat. She noticed how calm the room felt, different from yesterday's formal tension. The woman began with a few general questions about her past projects and ideas for the company. She answered confidently, her voice steadier than before. Then halfway through, the older man spoke. "I remember your voice," he said with a faint smile. She looked at him a bit confused. "My voice?" "Yes," he said softly. "Yesterday morning before the interview, you helped me cross the street." Her eyes widened in surprise. "That was you?" she asked, almost whispering. He nodded slowly, still smiling. "Yes, I didn't mention it then because I wanted to see who you were without that story getting in the way." She didn't know what to say. Her heart raced. She remembered his words clearly now. Kindness always finds its way back. He leaned back in his chair and continued. "Do you know how many people walked past me that morning? Dozens, but you stopped even though you were in a hurry. I could hear it in your voice. You were rushing. Yet you still helped." The room went quiet for a few seconds. She felt her throat tighten, unsure how to respond. Finally, she said softly, "I couldn't just walk away." "It didn't feel right," he nodded. "That's the kind of instinct we value here. Skills can be taught, but kindness and integrity come from within." The woman beside him smiled, watching quietly. He asked a few more questions, not about marketing strategies or sales numbers, but about life, about how she handled failure, what kept her motivated, what she believed made a good leader. Each question felt more personal, more thoughtful, and she answered from the heart, not trying to sound perfect or rehearsed. When the meeting ended, the man stood up and extended his hand. "Thank you for coming again," he said. "We'll be in touch soon." She shook his hand gently. "Thank you for the opportunity," she replied, still feeling a mixture of disbelief and gratitude. As she left the room, she could still feel his words echoing in her mind. She walked through the hallway, her steps light, her heart full. Something deep inside told her that this moment was going to change everything. Outside, the sun was brighter than before, and the city seemed to hum with energy. She stopped by a small park near the office and sat down on a bench. She watched people pass by, some rushing, some laughing, some lost in thought. She realized how many lives cross paths each day without us even noticing. One small choice, a pause, a smile, a helping hand, could shape everything in ways we don't expect. Later that evening, she met her friend for tea. Her friend listened with wide eyes as she told the story of the interview and the surprising truth about the blind man. "That's unbelievable," her friend said, shaking her head with a smile. "You helped him without knowing who he was, and now he's the one deciding your future." She laughed softly. "I know. It feels like something out of a story. But it really happened." Her friend smiled warmly. "Maybe it's fate. You did something good without expecting anything back. And maybe life just wanted to remind you that goodness never goes unnoticed." She nodded, sipping her tea, feeling a quiet peace in her heart. She didn't know if she would get the job, but she already felt changed. Sometimes just knowing that your actions meant something to someone is enough to give you hope. Days passed slowly. She checked her email every morning, her heart skipping each time her phone buzzed. On the 3rd day, she finally received another message from the company. This time, it wasn't just an invitation. It was an offer. Her breath caught as she read the words. They wanted her to join their team. The message was simple and professional, but at the end there was a short personal note from the older man. "We need people who remember to look up and see others, even when they're in a hurry. Welcome aboard." Tears filled her eyes as she read it again. She pressed her hand over her mouth, trying to contain her emotions. For a long moment she sat there in silence, letting it sink in. That one small act, the few minutes she spent helping a stranger, had turned into something she never imagined. It wasn't just about the job anymore. It was about the reminder that kindness, no matter how small, always matters. She called her friend, voice trembling with joy, and shared the news. Her friend screamed happily on the other end, and they both laughed until their eyes watered. That night, as she lay in bed, she thought about everything that had happened. The rush, the missed bus, the hesitation at the crosswalk, and the choice that changed it all. She realized that sometimes the moments we think are slowing us down are actually guiding us toward something better. She closed her eyes with a smile, whispering softly into the quiet room. Kindness really does find its way back. And with that thought, she drifted into peaceful sleep, unaware that her journey was only beginning. The first day at her new job started earlier than she expected. She woke up with a mixture of excitement and nerves, feeling the weight of both opportunity and responsibility. She dressed carefully, wanting to make a good impression, even though she already knew that the older man's note had given her the validation she needed. Today, she wanted to prove to herself that she deserved this chance. The city outside was waking up as she walked to the office. The streets were alive with people heading to their own jobs, drivers honking at each other and vendors calling out their morning offers. She could feel the rhythm of the city matching the rhythm of her heartbeat. She paused for a moment at a busy crosswalk, remembering the way she had guided that blind man days ago. She smiled quietly to herself, thinking about how one small act could set off a chain of unexpected events. When she reached the company building, it towered above her like a monument to ambition. Its glass walls reflected the sunlight, making the morning feel sharper, brighter. The receptionist greeted her warmly, and she felt a strange sense of belonging even though she had just arrived. The older man, the same one she had helped, waited for her in the conference room. He greeted her with the same calm smile. "Good morning," he said. "I'm glad to see you here." "Good morning," she replied, her voice steady but full of anticipation. He gestured toward a chair. "Please take a seat. Today you'll meet the team and start learning how we work." She sat down, trying to calm her excitement. Around the room, a few people were already there, professionals with friendly smiles, everyone welcoming her politely. She noticed that while the environment was professional, it didn't feel intimidating. There was a sense of teamwork, of collaboration. She liked that immediately. The morning began with introductions. She listened carefully, absorbing names, positions, and roles. She tried to remember everything, but more importantly, she wanted to understand the spirit of the team. Every person she met seemed engaged and genuinely caring about the work they did. It reminded her why she had wanted this position so badly, because she wasn't just looking for a job. She was looking for a place where she could contribute meaningfully. After the introductions, the older man, who was more than just a supervisor, invited her for a brief walk around the office. The floors were busy with people moving between cubicles, conversations flowing, the hum of computers and phones blending together in a steady rhythm. As they walked, he spoke about the company's mission, the projects they were working on, and the values that guided them. "Skills can be taught," he said quietly, "but character cannot. That's why we noticed you, not because you were the fastest or the most prepared, but because you showed compassion without hesitation." She felt a warm sense of pride, though she tried to hide it behind a polite smile. She remembered that morning at the crosswalk. She had only acted on instinct, without thinking about recognition or reward. And yet, that moment had led her here. The rest of the day moved quickly. She was introduced to her workspace, given basic tasks to familiarize herself with the systems, and shown how the team collaborated on projects. She was careful to take notes and ask questions when necessary, wanting to prove herself capable. At the same time, she didn't want to appear desperate. She wanted to be seen as confident, competent, and considerate, qualities she valued deeply. Around midday, she found herself alone in the break room, sipping water and watching her colleagues work through the glass walls. She thought about the blind man again and the words he had spoken. Kindness always finds its way back. She realized just how true that had become in her life. Her thoughts were interrupted by one of her new colleagues approaching her. "Hey, you're the one who helped Mr. Thompson, right?" the woman asked with a warm smile. "Yes," she replied, surprised that her act had already become known. "He told us about you yesterday," the colleague said. "It made quite an impression. You're going to fit right in here." She felt a little embarrassed but mostly grateful. It was strange how a single small decision could ripple through so many people's minds. She nodded politely, smiling quietly. After lunch, the older man returned to her desk. "I want you to start working on a small project with me," he said. "It's nothing huge, but it will give you a feel for how we handle real challenges." She felt a rush of excitement. "Of course," she said, trying to keep her voice calm. As they began, he explained the project carefully, but not in a way that felt patronizing. Instead, he encouraged her to think critically, ask questions, and contribute ideas. She quickly realized that this company valued creativity and honesty above all else. Mistakes were not punished. They were analyzed, discussed, and learned from. By late afternoon, she had already contributed a few suggestions that he acknowledged with genuine interest. The feeling of being heard was new and invigorating. She left the office that day feeling a sense of accomplishment, not just because of what she had done, but because of the environment she was now a part of. As she walked home, the city seemed different somehow. The streets, the people, the noise, they all felt richer, more layered. She thought about the moments that had led her here, the mornings of struggle, the days of small jobs, the interview, and most of all, the decision to help a stranger. That night, she called a friend to share her first day. She told her everything, the introductions, the team, the project, and how it felt to be welcomed so fully. Her friend listened with awe, asking questions about the older man and how she had felt during the first interactions. "It sounds like you're exactly where you're supposed to be," her friend said softly. She nodded, even though her friend couldn't see it. "It really feels that way," she said. "I keep thinking about that morning, the man I helped. If I hadn't stopped, none of this would have happened." Her friend laughed. "Sometimes life works in mysterious ways. Kindness doesn't just help others. It finds its way back to us when we least expect it." She smiled quietly, thinking about how true that was. For years, she had believed that success came from hard work and planning alone. But now she realized that heart mattered just as much as skill. Small choices, small acts of humanity, could open doors that she hadn't even imagined. The next few days passed in a blur of learning and adaptation. She quickly became familiar with her colleagues, the workflow, and the company culture. Every morning she arrived with the same mix of nervous excitement and determination. Every evening she left with a sense of purpose she had never felt before. One afternoon she was asked to accompany the older man on a client visit. The clients were impressed by her poise, her understanding of the project, and the way she listened carefully to every detail. After the meeting, the older man gave her a quiet nod. "You're learning quickly," he said. "But more importantly, you're learning with integrity." She realized that this mentorship was about more than just work. It was about shaping her into someone who could navigate challenges while staying true to herself. She thought again about that rainy morning, how small actions had led her here, and felt a quiet sense of gratitude. By the end of the week, she was not just part of the team. She felt like she belonged. Her confidence grew naturally, not forced. She still remembered the mornings of doubt, the moments of fear, and the uncertainty about whether she could ever reach this point. And now, every time she faced a new task, she reminded herself that patience, kindness, and honesty were as important as skill. On Friday evening, as she packed up to leave, the older man approached her once more. "You've done well this week," he said, his calm smile reassuring. "I want you to know that what you bring to this company goes beyond your work. Your presence, your perspective, and the way you treat people, that's what matters most." She thanked him quietly, feeling her chest swell with pride and relief. She knew that she had been given more than just a job. She had been given a place to grow, a place where she could be both skilled and kind, ambitious yet compassionate. As she walked home that night, the city lights reflected on the wet streets, and she felt a deep sense of contentment. Life had a way of surprising her, of turning small decisions into life-changing moments. And she understood more than ever that success was not measured only by positions or money, but by the difference she could make in the world around her. Her journey was only beginning, but for the first time she felt truly ready. The choice to help a stranger, the act of kindness she had thought was small, had led her to an opportunity that would shape her life forever. And she knew that she would carry that lesson with her every day, in every step, in every decision. The next week at the office brought new challenges. She felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness every morning as she stepped into the building. The tasks were more complicated now, deadlines tighter and expectations higher. Yet something inside her had shifted. She no longer felt like an outsider. She felt like she belonged even if she was still learning. Her mornings began with reviewing emails and checking her schedule. Each assignment carried responsibility, and each responsibility carried the weight of proving herself. She remembered the older man's words from her first week. Character cannot be taught. That is why we noticed you. Those words had become a quiet reminder that no matter how hard the work was, the way she approached it mattered most. One morning, she faced a particularly tricky situation. A project she had been working on for days had a sudden change. A client wanted adjustments that seemed almost impossible to meet in the short time given. She felt the tension rise in her chest, but instead of panicking, she reminded herself to stay calm and think clearly. She gathered her notes, checked her emails, and started prioritizing tasks. Every time she felt overwhelmed, she thought back to the morning she helped the blind man cross the street. That simple act, which seemed so small at the time, had changed the course of her life. If a small decision could lead to such an unexpected reward, she could handle this challenge too. She spent hours revising the project, carefully checking every detail, and ensuring that every suggestion from the client was considered. Her desk was a mess of papers, notes, and coffee cups, but she worked steadily. The older man stopped by a few times to observe, but he never micromanaged. Instead, he offered quiet encouragement, occasionally asking her questions that made her think deeper. "Why did you choose this approach?" he asked at one point. She explained her reasoning clearly, highlighting both practical and creative considerations. He nodded thoughtfully. "Good," he said. "Always think about the bigger picture, but don't forget the human element. Every project touches someone's life, even indirectly." By the end of the day, she had completed the revisions and sent the updated project to the client. She leaned back in her chair, exhausted but satisfied. She knew that perfection wasn't the goal. It was effort, integrity, and attention to detail. As the days went on, she faced more challenges. Sometimes deadlines were tight, sometimes clients were difficult, and sometimes she doubted herself. But with each challenge, she learned something new, not just about her work, but about herself. She realized that true growth came from persistence, patience, and empathy. One afternoon, the older man asked her to join him for a short walk outside the building. The sun was shining and the city seemed alive with movement. People hurried past, cars honked, and the air smelled faintly of coffee and fresh pastries from nearby shops. "I wanted to talk to you about something important," he said quietly. "Not about work, but about life." She looked at him, curious. "Do you remember the morning you helped me cross the street?" he asked. She nodded immediately. "Of course. How could I forget?" He smiled faintly. "That morning wasn't just a random moment for me. It showed me something about you. Your instinct to do the right thing even when it's inconvenient. That quality is rare, and it's why you are here, not just because of your skills." She felt a wave of emotion, a mixture of pride and humility. "I didn't think it mattered at the time," she said softly. "I just did what seemed right." "That's exactly why it mattered," he replied. "When someone acts out of genuine concern for others, it's obvious. People notice, even if they don't say it immediately. That kind of character influences everything you do, even in ways you can't see yet." She walked beside him silently for a moment, letting the words sink in. She realized that her career wasn't just about completing tasks or meeting deadlines. It was about the choices she made along the way she treated people, and the integrity she carried in every action. Back in the office, she felt renewed energy. She approached every task with a clearer sense of purpose, thinking not just about results, but about how her work could help others. The team noticed the difference too. Colleagues started approaching her with questions, seeking her input and respecting her opinions. She began to feel a quiet confidence growing inside her, a sense of belonging, paired with the knowledge that she was making a real contribution. Then one day, a critical meeting was scheduled with a new client. She was asked to participate and present part of the project. Her heart raced at first, but she reminded herself to stay calm. She had prepared thoroughly, but it was more than that. She knew she could handle this because she had learned to trust herself and her judgment. During the meeting, she spoke clearly, confidently, and with sincerity. She answered questions thoughtfully and didn't shy away from admitting when she didn't have an immediate answer. She noticed the clients responding positively, nodding and taking notes. Afterward, the older man gave her a subtle nod of approval. "See? You can do this," he said quietly as they left the room. "I was nervous," she admitted, "but it felt different. I felt like I could really contribute." "That's the difference," he said. "Confidence doesn't come from never feeling afraid. It comes from acting anyway, knowing that you have the skills, the integrity, and the determination to handle what comes." As the weeks passed, she continued to take on more responsibilities. Each day brought new challenges, but also new lessons. She learned to balance urgency with careful thought, to communicate clearly without arrogance, and to treat every person with respect, no matter their position. She found herself reflecting often on that one morning, the act of helping a stranger. She realized that it wasn't just a memory, but a lesson she carried forward in everything she did. Small decisions, acts of kindness, and integrity were the foundation of her career and life. Without them, success felt hollow. One evening, as she was leaving the office, the older man caught up with her. "I want you to know," he said, "that your presence here has made a difference already. Not only in the work we do, but in the way people approach each other. Your example matters more than you realize." She felt a lump in her throat, a mixture of gratitude and surprise. I didn't expect that," she said. "Most people don't," he replied gently. "But the right actions, no matter how small, always have consequences. Yours just happened to reach further than you thought." Walking home that night, the city lights reflected on wet streets from a light drizzle. She thought about her journey, the small act of helping the blind man, the interview, the first days on the job, the challenges she had overcome. It was clear to her now that life had a way of rewarding character and integrity in ways that couldn't always be predicted. When she arrived home, she sat by the window and reflected on the week. She realized that the lessons she was learning at work weren't just about projects or deadlines. They were about life. About the people she met, the choices she made, and the values she held. She understood that her career, her dreams, and her success were connected not just to her skills but to the way she lived every day. As she drifted off to sleep that night, she thought about the older man's words, the lessons she had learned, and the journey ahead. She felt a quiet confidence, a sense that she was on the right path. The challenges she had faced were not obstacles, but opportunities to grow. And she knew that more lessons awaited her in the days to come. And deep down, she understood that her journey was not just about her own success. It was about the ripple effect of her actions, the people she inspired, and the difference she could make in the world around her. The morning she helped a stranger cross the street had been small in her mind, but it had led to something far greater, a life shaped by purpose, kindness, and integrity. The days that followed were filled with steady work, small victories, and quiet learning. Each morning she walked to the office with a sense of purpose she had never known before. She noticed how her colleagues greeted her warmly, how her contributions were valued, and how every task, no matter how small, seemed to connect to something larger. She understood now that success wasn't just about finishing projects or meeting deadlines. It was about the impact she made through her actions and attitude. One morning, she arrived at the office to find the older man waiting for her in the lobby. He smiled as she approached. "Good morning," he said. "I want to show you something today." Curious, she followed him to a small conference room she hadn't used before. Inside, a group of people was gathered, some she recognized from previous meetings and a few new faces she had never seen. The older man gestured for her to sit. "I invited you here today because there is someone I want you to meet," he said. "Someone who has been a part of my life for a long time, and whose perspective matters greatly." The room was quiet as a man with a white cane entered. Her heart skipped a beat. She immediately recognized him. It was the blind man she had helped cross the street that morning. He smiled warmly, and she felt a rush of memory and emotion. "You remember me?" he said softly. "Yes," she replied, her voice catching slightly. I'll never forget." The older man spoke again. "This is Mr. Thompson. He has been an advisor to our company for many years, offering insights that help us understand people and communities better. He is here today because your actions that morning have already made a difference in ways you don't yet realize." She looked at him, amazed. The man nodded gently, his eyes covered by the dark glasses, but she could feel the warmth and understanding in his presence. "You helped me that morning," he said, "not because you wanted recognition, not because you expected anything in return. You helped me because it was the right thing to do." And that choice speaks volumes about who you are. She felt a wave of emotion. I didn't know it would matter, she said quietly. It matters more than you can imagine, he replied. Kindness is not measured in grand gestures. Small acts, done sincerely, ripple out in ways we can't always see. Today, I wanted to be here to acknowledge that and show you that it is noticed and appreciated. The room stayed quiet for a moment, and she could feel the weight of the moment. It wasn't about the job, the company, or even the tasks she had completed. It was about recognition of character, of values, and of choices made from the heart. After a pause, the older man continued. There is one more thing. We want to offer you an opportunity to lead a special project, something that requires creativity, leadership, and empathy. It is a chance to shape not just your career but the way we approach important work in the company. Her eyes widened. I don't know what to say, she whispered. You don't need to say anything yet, he replied gently. We want you to think about it, and if you accept, we will support you fully. This is a role for someone who doesn't just work hard but who leads with heart. You have already shown that you can do this. She nodded slowly, trying to absorb the enormity of the moment. The weight of responsibility was heavy, but it felt right. For the first time, she realized that her career wasn't just about ambition or success. It was about using her abilities to make a meaningful impact. Over the next few days, she prepared for the new role. She thought carefully about the project, how to approach it, and how to lead the team effectively. She spent long hours planning, organizing, and imagining the possibilities. The older man and Mr. Thompson offered guidance when needed, but they let her take the lead. It was a balance of mentorship and independence that allowed her confidence to grow. One afternoon, as she was finalizing her plans, Mr. Thompson approached her quietly. Do you remember what I said that morning? He asked. Yes, she replied immediately. Kindness always finds its way back. He smiled gently. It does. Not always in the ways we expect, but it does. That day, your decision to help me changed the course of your life in ways you could never have imagined. And now you have the chance to continue making a difference, not just for yourself, but for many others. She felt tears prick her eyes. She had never thought that something so simple, offering help to a stranger, could lead to this. And yet, here she was, stepping into a role that would allow her to grow, lead, and touch the lives of others through her work. The following weeks were both challenging and rewarding. She worked closely with her team, organizing meetings, delegating tasks, and offering guidance. She listened to ideas, encouraged creativity, and ensured that every team member felt valued. Her approach was gentle but firm, empathetic but decisive. Slowly, she began to see the impact she was making, not just in completed projects but in the culture of the team itself. People were inspired to work harder, communicate better, and treat each other with respect. One day, the older man called her into his office. I've been watching your progress, he said. You're doing more than I expected. Not just in results, but in how you approach your team. That is leadership, she smiled quietly. I'm just trying to do my best. You are doing more than that, he said. You are showing that success and kindness can exist together, that integrity and ambition don't have to conflict. That is rare and it matters. Her heart swelled with pride, but she remained humble. She knew there was still so much to learn. Every day brought new challenges, but she now approached them with confidence, patience, and a sense of purpose. Weeks turned into months, and her projects flourished. She saw the results of her decisions, the way her team responded to guidance, and the positive impact on clients and communities. She began to understand the full meaning of the older man's words. The choices we make, even in small moments, shape our future in ways we cannot predict. Then one rainy afternoon, she was walking near the office when she saw an elderly man hesitating at a crosswalk. Her heart skipped a beat. Without thinking, she walked over and offered her arm. Would you like some help crossing? She asked gently. The man smiled and nodded. She guided him across safely, feeling a familiar warmth in her chest. When they reached the other side, he thanked her, and she smiled quietly, thinking about how life had come full circle. She realized that moments like this, acts of kindness, were more than gestures. They were expressions of who she had become. Back at the office, she reflected on the journey she had taken. From rushing to an interview, helping a stranger, and stepping into a job she had dreamed of, to leading a team and making a difference. She understood that every step, every decision, had mattered. and she knew that she had carried with her the lessons of integrity, empathy, and courage. One evening, she received a brief message from the older man. It simply said, "You've done well.
Keep leading with heart."
The world needs more people like you." She read it over and over, letting the words sink in. She felt grateful, not just for the recognition, but for the journey itself. She had learned that success was not about titles or money, but about making choices that mattered, helping others, and leading with compassion. Sitting by her window that night, watching the city lights reflect in puddles from the rain, she thought about the blind man she had helped, the lessons she had learned, and the path ahead. She smiled quietly, knowing that her life had been changed by a single act of kindness, and that she had the power to continue creating change, not just for herself but for others. Her dream job was not just a position, it was a responsibility, a chance to lead with heart, and a reminder that life rewards those who act with integrity. She understood now that moments of courage and compassion, even when small, can ripple through the world, shaping opportunities, relationships, and futures. And as she prepared for another day, another challenge, another chance to make a difference, she whispered softly to herself, "Kindness always finds its way back."